What's up, guys? Welcome back to Street Sense, and this is the 13th episode of our podcast, the Gabfest. Now, as you guys can already see, the setup is kind of different today, and the previous setup, whatever you guys have been seeing all the way throughout till now, was actually from my living room, but that's like kind of occupied today. But no matter what happens, the grind should never stop and will never stop, and that's why we are over here. I've done like kind of a small kind of setup from my bedroom itself. So that's pretty much about it, guys. No matter what happens, the grind would never stop, and the content would never stop coming towards you guys. So yeah. So yes, guys, before we move forward to the main topic, let's talk about the drip of the day and what is it that I'm wearing today. So this is basically a Chaser hoodie from Untitled Clothing. Untitled again being a homegrown brand from Delhi itself, and they ship all across India. They've got some crazy concepts happening with their apparel. This is one of them with like an animated character, the Chaser. And besides this, they've got other characters also happening, like this Mr. Doob and lots of other characters. And some of them are like already in place, others are like just upcoming with their new concepts with their clothing range. The stuff, as you guys can already see, is like pretty premium. And besides this, as you guys can already see, it's pretty true to the style. So that's something that I love. Also, something that I personally really love is the hood. It's like kind of oversized a little bit. This is not something that's like a usual hood size with any of the hoodies. So that's that. Besides these hoodies and other clothing, also they've got some really minimalistic sort of a vibe happening with their long sleeve tees. So I like really would appreciate all you guys to just go and check them out over their Instagram and over their website. And they've got some amazing products, guys. And also, not to forget, if you guys like anything and if you guys would like to buy anything from Untitled Clothing, use our code, which is STD. Yeah, so our code is basically STD, and you guys will get a discount of 20% all across your entire order. So yeah, use that till the time you guys have this opportunity. That's that. Moving forward, underneath I'm wearing joggers, like basic black joggers from H&M. Nothing super special about it, but goes super well with this sort of a hoodie. So yeah, that's pretty much about it, guys. Now let's quickly move forward towards the main topic. So guys, as we all know, all of us are like stuck in this whole lockdown situation because of this whole pandemic, COVID-19. And this is not really something that only India is suffering, but the entire, it's like literally a global phenomena, and everyone is suffering their own levels of issues here and there. Every country is suffering in their own sort of ways. It's already been 14 days since we all have been stuck in this whole lockdown, and there's another 7 days to go. And not to deny the fact that there's a very high chance that this lockdown might even extend because of the pandemic again, right? So let's move past this whole topic of talking about as to how we got to fight it. What is it that we should do on our behalves? Because there's nothing that we can do. Governments are doing their own bit. Researchers are doing their own bit. They're like millions and millions of dollars and rupees that are pumped inside the research budget to find a cure and a vaccine for it. So we as regular humans, we can't really do something about it. The best thing that we can basically do is just isolate ourselves, social distancing, wash our hands, this and that. You guys know the drill. I don't really have to tell you about that. So that's pretty much about it. But what we are over here to talk about is, the economic crisis basically that our industry will face. So, if any one of you has learned anything from the business admin point of view or from economics point of view, we guys can already judge. Like we, as in, I would include myself also in that space because I've also like graduated from a similar background, right? So we can already basically judge that because of this past 2 weeks of lockdown, our economy has already drowned way too much. The cash flows are completely zero for each and every one of us, and basically the entire global economy has gone back, say, at least 2 years easily. So what is this actually doing is, this is basically dropping down the purchase power of each and every one of us in our own ways. So the buying capacity and the purchasing power of a lower middle class person would of course be a different sort of a value than an you know than a person who's from the upper scale of the segment, right? All in all, to say is that everyone has been hit in their own ways from the financial and the economical point of view as well. Like, be it a layman, be it a business personality, be it an employee from the corporate world, or be it say professionals like doctors, engineers, this and that and whatnot. Right? Everyone has been hit with this whole thing, and the purchase power and the buying capacities of each and every individual has basically dropped down way too much in this past 2 weeks already, and eventually for how long it's gonna go, like, no one knows. So what is this actually gonna do is, as individuals, this is gonna move us away from, say, our wants, as we say. Like, there was a concept in economics like needs versus wants, if you guys know about that, right? So basic example would be like, a need is basically plain water, but a want is like a soft drink or a soda like Pepsi or Thumbs Up, something of that sort. Just to give you guys an example, I'm just picking this up, right? So what this whole money crunch and the cash flow crunch will do to each and every one of us is basically, move us away from the wants, and our thought process is gonna move away from that, and we would like to invest most of our money into the basic necessities, because of course, as far as today's conditions are concerned, the basic necessities have also become like a crazy phenomena to get our hands on, because the prices have been skyrocketed because of the shortage of supply. Like, again, demand and supply comes in place, right? So there are a lot of factors that have affected all of us, but majorly because of the cash flow and the cash crunch. It's, in ways, we can't deny the fact that fashion, in not just our country and not just our mentalities but all over the globe, is considered to be a luxury for most of the people, right? What is this going to do is, this is going to move us away from becoming a potential consumer or a potential buyer for a fashion brand, right? And this is not just something, again, I would say, not just something for India, but this is on a global level again, right? So as far as, eventually, whenever the lockdown is also over, and when everything gets back into place, the brands are back in their operational situations, right? Still, the lack for the brands would be, the potential customers and the potential revenue that, on an average they could churn out of a customer would of course drop down, right? And that's basically, on a sustainable level, brands would have to work their business models around as to how they can become sustainable back again, because of course the revenue model will have to be revamped for each and everyone, like, not just an upcoming brand, not just a brand who has been like just 5 years old, or this is something that's gonna happen for brands like Nike and Adidas also, because again, sneakers also are considered like luxury only. It's a piece of footwear, right? So no matter what happens on a mass level, if we talk about, no matter what happens, if you got like three pairs of sneakers also, you're gonna still refrain yourself from buying another pair, which you probably or potentially would have had this whole situation been not the case. But now that would become like an apprehension for most of the people, because if you're, say, investing about 4 grand or 5 grand on a piece of clothing, then you can potentially think, and most of us would do, like, rather than investing it on a piece of clothing or footwear, let me invest into something that might give me back the money, like an investment, or put it in like basic necessities like food, shelter, or other things like that. On a brand level, if we may talk about, so each and every brand, because of this lockdown, has already incurred a lot of losses, because no matter what happens, the expenses are still in place, be it the rentals, be it the employees' salaries and their basic wages, and likewise other expenses also. We would not go super deep into it, but I would just give you guys a basic example and basic ideology behind this whole thing. So all these brands have already incurred a lot of losses, and no matter what happens, this becomes a moral duty for each and every brand to support their employees also in this whole situation of pandemic, wherein the cash crunch is all across the place. So no matter what happens, the salaries need to be paid. And even if say the government says that eventually, there will be sort of reforms coming in wherein you guys can basically pay your rents and other expenses later on, say 3 months or 6 months down the line. But no matter what happens, it's still an expense, and that expense is not something that can be covered up later on as well because of a different sort of a sale, because the expenses are never ending. The sort of revenue that a brand basically churns out in a month, uh, the profit is always and always achieved after dropping down all the expenses, as the whole equations also say. So no matter whatever expenses they've incurred in this whole situation, that entire thing's gonna be a loss because there have been zero amount of sales happening, right? So no matter what happens, it's still gonna be a loss even if you get this whole leverage period of say 3 months or 6 months down the line, but that's still gonna be a loss. So the turnovers will drop down. They have already dropped down for most of the brands, right? And we won't even go into the people who are suffering this pandemic and going through this whole corona situation, but we'll just talk about on the lines of this, what has this lockdown done to all of us and specifically our fashion industry. So basically the whole idea is that on a brand level, the losses have already increased because of crazy amounts of expenses that they have already incurred, and there is a very high chance that they might have to incur for a longer period of time as well. And on the other hand, the buying capacity is also dropping down for each and every personality today, right? Be it a lower middle class personality, or be it a like a $1 million kind of a personality, right? So this is something that has hit all of us. On a brand level, this is something that has hit us from both the sides because, as I just said, expenses are there, the buying powers have dropped down. But the other thing, if we may actually talk about, is the fact that during this lockdown situation, a lot of people have started investing their time over social media and over internet a lot, and that has become the best opportunity for each and every brand to create a community around them only, not just as fashion industry, not just streetwear as a culture, but around their brand itself. Now is the time when they can create a community around their brand, which of course will attract a lot of people towards them. The conversion rate for eventually them to become a consumer would be slower and lower as well, not to deny that fact, but the number of people that can at this point in time connect with a lot of brands, a lot of entrepreneurs as personal personalities, right? So that's basically, that's specifically a point wherein brands can achieve a lot at this point in time, because everyone is spending their time in most of the cases over internet and over social media only. So the whole idea is how eventually brands can basically catch this whole traction in whatever they've been able to achieve and whatever they can actually achieve during this whole lockdown situation. So what is how they can catch this whole traction and eventually as and when they get back into place. But as I said this thing earlier as well, each and every brand, especially the homegrown brands, would have to revamp their business models, their revenue models, and anything and everything that revolves around the commercials of their brand. Why? Because if we talk about crazy big brands, they have big setups, big sort of investments, big board of directors sort of thing happening. We take up any of the brands, say H&M, Zara, Supremes, Off-Whites, Louis Vuitton, all these things, right? But on homegrown level, if we talk about, most of the brands are individually driven, right? So say for example, Jaywalking is driven by Jai Jalal. Not one is driven by Abhishek Patni, and likewise other brands also are like either individually driven, or there are like two, three different friends or partners who have come in together to run that specific brand, which of course is a very big drawback for most of the brands at this point in time, because there is not a lot of investment that can be pumped in. The cash flow is any which way zero, and the revenue model needs to be revamped to get back into space and to bring back sustainability with the brand, and not just work towards numbers and churning out a lot of profits through a set number of sales. The agenda and the idea should be to bring back the entire brand into a sustainable level, so that things can get back into their own pace ASAP. Moving past that, guys, let's talk about the countries that have actually been, most struck with this whole pandemic. Number one being, of course, China, and of course, it's going to take a lot of time for China to get back into its own place, and get back, the sort of employment they had for each and every brand. And again, it's a fact that most of the sneakers production, most of the streetwear production actually happens, and not just, let's actually move past streetwear and sneakers also, but most of the productions for all the big brands, be it tech, be it fashion industry, be it any other sort of industry also, most of the production happens in China only. And it, after getting produced in China, things get distributed around the globe, right? So that, of course, it's going to take time for China to get back into its own place, and bring back that sort of employment, bring back that sort of productivity, because on a brand level, of course, it's going to take brands also some time to gain trust back with China as to whether they are completely COVID free or not, because no one would like to have this sort of pandemic, if suppressed at one point in time, to eventually have it back again, right? So China being affected on those lines, that's one. Two, Italy, right? As we all know, Italy is like the heart of the fashion industry, as most of us actually say, right? So most of the luxury brands, let's talk about Gucci, Louis Vuitton. Like, I'm not really sure whether they are out there or not, but most of these luxury brands like Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Dior, and Prada, lots of other brands as well, operate out of Italy only. And there have been, like, not just because Italy has been struck with this pandemic, but a lot of employees out of these brands have been affected, not just because of this lockdown, not just because of getting stuck from pandemic, but suffering the pandemic themselves. uh, is like something that's really sad that has happened. And brands have already got their numbers out, as to it's already been about 60% of a drop in their turnover that they've already faced for the upcoming financial year, which is super big, because 60% for an entire brand, that too on a turnover level, right, is normally, if I may say, is normally their profit margins, if we talk about. So if the profits any which ways have dropped down to zero, of course, for them to come back and gain back their own space in the industry as a whole would of course take time for them, especially considering the fact, the price points and the utility of their products, which is completely luxury wear, right? Of course, it's going to take way too long for them to get back into its own place. So that's that. As of now, we've already talked about how basically our homegrown brands should probably, revolve their business models around, and how they have been affected, how the losses have actually hit each and every one of us. Our buying power is going super down, our purchase power going super down. Then on a global level, how this has affected our industry as a whole, right? Now, something that's not out there yet, and I'm not really sure as to whether a lot of people are thinking on those lines or not, But this was just a thought that came into my mind, and I just thought, that I should probably share with all you guys. Is the fact, again, as I just said, that fashion is considered luxury specifically in our country, right? And if a product is priced anything say beyond 2000 bucks as well, or say 5000 bucks as well, it's always considered to be a premium luxury product already, right? Even though we are living in like 2020, and there have been crazy sort of reforms that brands have come up with, but on a government level, on an economy level, it's always considered luxury, any product which is beyond 5000 bucks, specifically in India. So, considering the fact that our entire economy has been struck with this pandemic and the cash flows have gone down, economy has taken like two steps back and have gone back to 2018 already. There is a very high chance that we might see newer reforms and newer amendments coming in on the finance ministry perspective, wherein, of course, the first industry that's going to get a hit or might get a hit, I would say, uh, would be the fashion industry, as we all know. Like, we already saw that on international e-commerce and luxury goods, the customs on international shipping already increased for this financial year to 77% from about 35 to about 40%. They increased it to 77%, which was any which ways a very big hit. But considering that all of us have been struck with this thing, economy has gone down, and to get back money into the economy, this is probably one of the things that our government, as a step that they might actually have to take, considering, to bring back money into the economy, to churn the money out of people and invest it into other resources and other pieces where it's required probably more, right? So fashion industry is one industry which uh, gets this sort of a hit way too much. So taxations actually, basically speaking, taxations on street fashion, any sort of fashion, luxury goods for sure, would or not would, I would say, but can increase, which of course is going to be a crazy hit. Which, again, as a streetwear enthusiast and as a part of this community and this culture, I would not like that, because any which ways the taxes are huge, and because of taxes, a lot of times the price point of an XYZ product reaches the sky, guys, right? So that's not something that any of us need or want, or want it to happen anytime soon. But practically speaking, being on realistic like a space, this is something that can actually happen. And if this happens again, this is gonna take our industry, even a few steps back. And again, we might get a crazy hit on the price points perspective and the buying capacity, purchasing power, and on a brand level, it's going to take a, for the brand owners, this might become a very big issue, right? So, not to talk about all the negatives, again, as I said, this is the perfect time for all the brands to build a community around their brand, and not just their entire industry as a whole. Build a community, drive more traffic about it, have a conversation about their brands, because that's how people connect with the brands more, not just with their products, but with their concepts, but with their ideologies, right? So this is the perfect time for all these brands to connect with more and more people, and talk about their brand, talk about their concepts, and be accepting of the ideologies of the common people and their audience, so that eventually, whenever they are drop anything and everything whatsoever they drop after this whole lockdown situation, there's already a set number of people who are connected with you and potentially be your consumers, right? So yes, guys, that's pretty much it for the day. I know this was like kind of a long sort of a conversation that happened, not as long as like our first few episodes, of course, but yeah, this is something that I personally thought that is something super important for us to talk about. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's pretty much it for the day. Thank you so very much for tuning in. And yeah, Untitled Clothing. If you guys like it, STD is the code. Get 20% discount. And yes, sorry, I just forgot about one thing. Buying power is gonna drop down, and it's gonna get really difficult for all of us to get our hands on products like sneakers and streetwear, this and that and whatnot, right? But there's one way that you guys can get a very sick pair of a Nike SB Air Max Janoski 2, right? Completely for free. Why? Because we are doing a giveaway, guys. This is completely for free. Just go hop onto our Instagram handle. The links down in the description. It's basically Street Sense on Instagram. So go and follow us over there. The giveaway is live. The announcement of the winner is gonna happen this weekend. So make sure you enter. You follow all these steps. The steps are pretty easy. It's a completely free giveaway. So get this chance. This is your opportunity to get your hands on a sick pair. And yes, number one, enter the giveaway. Two, check out Untitled Clothing. If you guys like it, use the code STD. Guys will get 20% discount. Thank you so very much for tuning in. If you guys liked what you guys saw and heard, do hit the like button and don't leave without subscribing, guys. Please, please, please subscribe. Yeah. Thank you so very much. Take care. Stay away from the viruses. Stay inside your isolation space. Thank you so very much. Take care. Good night.